TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. The first golden glow of street lamps splashed across the slick cobblestones of Emberhaven Cove as Zena Nightingale slipped out of her sleek black sedan. She paused, smoothing the lapels of her tailored emerald blazer and checking her reflection against the glass facade of Obsidian Lounge, a bar so exclusive that its velvet-lined entrance was guarded by two silent hosts in obsidian stone masks. At 28, Zena was already the creative director of Ember and Echo, one of the city's top boutique agencies, and she had dismissed the notion of marriage long ago. Tonight, though, she was here on a mission from her grandmother, Zena Nightingale, a matriarch whose ironclad will could move mountains. Alicia had summoned her granddaughter earlier that afternoon in the family's stately Greenwich Manor, over porcelain teacups and lightly toasted crostini. The conversation had been polite at first, until Alicia placed a single photograph in front of Zena. It showed a smiling toddler in a Sunday best dress, perched awkwardly on Alicia's lap. "Your cousin Sophia," Alicia said, her tone softening for the first time in 30 years. "She's expecting her first child in January, and I want another little Nightingale to cradle before I'm gone. Is that too much to ask?" Zena's jaw had tightened. "Grandma, you know how I feel. I love my work. I love my independence. I'm not interested in matchmaking." "But you will," Alicia had replied, her violet eyes hardening. "Tonight, you will meet someone worthy, and you will give me hope." Now, standing before the lounge's black glass doors, Zena took a deep breath. The last time she'd played along with Alicia's schemes, she'd ended up engaged to a hedge fund manager who spent more time texting than talking. She would not let that happen again. Still, she owed her grandmother this one evening. With a last glance up at the wrought iron balcony where Alicia no doubt watched from above, Zena pushed open the doors. Inside, Obsidian Lounge was a shadowy wonder. Walls of dark marble reflected dim, amber lighting, and elegant, whisper-loud conversations floated around crescent-shaped booths upholstered in onyx velvet. A live jazz trio hovered on a raised platform, each note curling through the air like liquid silk. Zena made her way past tables of polished executives and influencers in couture, nodding politely until she reached a plush corner where her friend Mia sat waiting. Mia waved energetically, her sequined dress catching flickers of light. "Zena, finally." She drained her cocktail and motioned to the bartender. Zena slid into the seat beside her. "Who's first up?" Zena asked, setting down her chipped phone.
Mia grinned wickedly.
"Your grandmother sent me the dossier. He's around 6'2", dark hair, salt and pepper at the temples, professor-turned-lawyer type. Classic Mercer and Blackwood. Should be at the bar, sipping neat scotch." A shiver of anticipation, no, of defiance, ran down Zena's spine. She raised an eyebrow. "He sounds exactly like the last one." "Trust me," Mia said, waving her hand. "This one's different. They say he's brilliant, relentless, and single." "Single," Zena repeated, the word tasting bitter. "That almost makes him half interesting." Mia stood and sashayed toward the bar. Moments later, Zena saw her waving discreetly. Zena turned, and there he was, Thorne Blackmoor, leaning against the marble bar top. His tailored charcoal suit hugging broad shoulders. His profile was sharp, high cheekbones, a straight nose, a jawline sculpted as if the darkness itself had carved it. He glanced up, and their eyes locked. Thorne's steely gray gaze met Zena's emerald scrutiny for an instant that stretched into centuries. Then he returned his attention to the bartender, asking for just water. "On the rocks." Mia slid back, beaming. "Thorne Blackmoor," she whispered. "Your next victim." Zena took a breath and rose, smoothing her hair. She crossed the room with measured confidence. every heel click echoing in her ears. Arriving beside him, she allowed just a hint of a smile. "Are you Thorne Blackmoor?" He turned, regarding her with polite curiosity. "I am." His voice was low, calm, something in it suggested midnight confessions and courtroom revelations. "I'm Zena Nightingale," she said, holding out her hand. His grip was firm, surprisingly warm. "Pleasure," he said. Then, after a beat, "You look familiar." Zena arched a brow.
Doi.
He closed his eyes briefly. "You look like my next case." A flicker of amusement crossed Zena's lips. She leaned in. "Confidential. Well, I can assure you, Mr. Blackmoor, you have no case to bring against me, unless taking your breath away counts." He held her gaze for a heartbeat, then smiled, just the slightest tilt of his mouth that sent her pulse quickening. "That's one proposal." Zena swirled her martini. "I have another." His eyebrows rose. "I want a child," she announced softly, as if stating a fact. No strings attached. No halfway measures. Thorne blinked once, slowly. The bar's dim glow cast deep shadows over his expression. But she felt the words strike him like a sudden wind. "You want to have a child with me? Think of it as a creative collaboration," she said, sweetly deadly. "One night, and we both walk away. No ties, just the result." His lips quirked in a half-smile, half-grimace. "Most people want dinner first." Zena shrugged, unperturbed. "I like to skip the small talk." He considered her for a long moment, turning her proposal over inside his mind. Finally, he lifted his glass of water. No ice, no mixer. "Deal," he said, a single word spoken in a deliberate whisper. Zena felt her heart leap, both at the audacity of her own offer and the fact that he didn't refuse. "Good," she said. "It's settled, then." They nodded to each other like conspirators who had just forged a secret pact. Behind them, the jazz trio shifted to a smoky saxophone solo, and Obsidian Lounge seemed to pulse around their private bubble. Zena stood, raising her glass. "To new arrangements," she toasted. Thorne clinked water glass to martini. "To clarity," he replied. As she slipped back to her booth, Zena caught Mia's wide-eyed look. She sank in beside her friend, sipping slowly. "Consider that Exhibit A," she whispered. "Let's see if he keeps his end of the bargain."
Mia laughed softly.
"You're fearless." Zena settled in, eyes on the bar where Thorne Blackmoor watched her, a silent promise burning between them under Obsidian's midnight glow. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Emberhaven Cove had just witnessed its most daring negotiation yet. The following evening, Zena Nightingale ascended the sweeping marble steps of Aurelian Manor beneath a sky streaked with ink-blue clouds. Lanterns framed the arched entrance, casting golden pools of light over manicured hedges shaped like mythical beasts. This was the estate of Marguerite Blackmoor, Thorne's formidable matriarch. And tonight she would host a private dinner, an official courting, in the eyes of high society. Zena smoothed the skirt of her midnight blue satin gown and paused at the top of the stairs. Every corner of the manor whispered of lineage and power, ancestral portraits in gilded frames, towering columns carved with Blackmoor sigils, and the faint echo of string quartets drifting from within. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. No late-night pacts or cheeky proposals tonight, only proper decorum. Inside the grand foyer, a pair of footmen in polished obsidian waistcoats guided her coat to a waiting butler. "Ms. Nightingale," he said, his voice formal as an orchestra's opening chord. "Your party is assembled in the heraldic hall." Zena offered a curt nod, following the butler through a series of luminous corridors lined with rare manuscripts and trophies from Hemingway-era safaris. Each footstep on the polished onyx floor rang out like a whispered secret. As they turned a corner, Zena glimpsed Thorne in conversation with his mother. Marguerite Blackmoor stood poised beneath a massive chandelier, her silver hair swept into an intricate chignon. Even at first glance, one sensed the force of her will. Thorne's jaw was set, his suit impeccable under the crystal gleam. Zena hesitated only a heartbeat, enough to smooth her expression, and entered the heraldic hall. The room's vaulted ceiling depicted a mural of phoenixes and swirling constellations, while tapestries illustrated centuries of Blackmoor triumphs. At the far end, a long walnut table was laid with fine bone china, flickering candelabra, and centerpieces of midnight-hued roses. Seated at intervals were Thorne's aunts, uncles, and cousins, each regard a polite appraisal. Marguerite rose, her smile measured but genuine enough to warm the room's chill. "Zena, welcome to Aurelian Manor." Her tone carried both invitation and challenge. "I'm delighted you could join us." Zena inclined her head, her single silver earring catching the candlelight. "Thank you, Mrs. Blackmoor. It's an honor." Marguerite nodded to a footman, who poured Zena a flute of vintage Belcour's sparkling rose. "We thought something light to start," she said, as Zena accepted her glass. The footman withdrew, and Marguerite lowered her voice to a quiet murmur directed only at Zena and Thorne. "My son tells me you have unique arrangements." She paused just long enough to let those words settle. "Is that correct?" Thorne's fingers tightened around his own glass of scotch. He met Zena's gaze and inclined his head. "Mother." His formality echoed through the hush. "Zena and I have an understanding." Marguerite lifted a perfectly arched eyebrow. "An understanding, yes. But we adhere to Blackmoor tradition here." She laid a delicate hand on the table's edge. "A proper engagement, followed by a ceremony, and then a child." Zena raised her rose with the poise of a practiced toast. "Mrs. Blackmoor, I respect your family's customs. Rest assured, I intend to honor them, once Thorne and I have reached our agreements." Her tone was civil, but the implication hovered like a charged breeze. Marguerite nodded, accepting the diplomatic volley. "Very well. Let us begin our dinner." A discreet tap sounded against Thorne's glass, and the first course emerged on silver platters. Seared scallops atop a puree of heirloom carrots, garnished with candied ginger. Conversation resumed around the table, though every guest stole glances at Zena and Thorne, as if watching chess masters plan their next move. Aunt Celeste, draped in peacock blue silk, leaned toward Zena. "Darling, tell us about Ember and Echo. I hear you spearheaded the Avalon campaign?" Zena offered a practiced smile. "Yes, we proudly launched their lunar-inspired campaign. They're a boutique jeweler house." It was a gratifying challenge. Celeste's eyes glittered. "Remarkable. You must have boundless creativity." Meanwhile, Uncle Gregory peered at Thorne, swirling his scotch. "Everett, dear boy, I hope you've not wasted your time on fleeting flings?" His tone was teasing, but Zena caught the underlying note of warning. Thorne set down his glass. "I value permanence in family matters, Uncle," he replied evenly. "Zena is exceptional." The room quieted again, and Marguerite raised her voice. "Let us move on to the entree." The footmen carried in platters of herb-crusted lamb loin and smoked beet risotto. Silverware chimed softly against porcelain as plates circulated. Cousin Helena, sipping rose, leaned close to Zena. "Your grandmother, Alicia, speaks very highly of you. Must be quite the force." Zena set down her fork thoughtfully. "Grandma is persuasive," she said lightly. "I trust your mother's influence is equally inspiring." Helena laughed, a gentle, melodic sound, then turned to Thorne and continued the conversation. The knives and forks clicked as everyone resumed their social dance. Throughout the meal, Zena felt Thorne's gaze on her, steady and assessing. At times their hands brushed while passing a serving dish, sending small electric jolts up her arm. Each encounter deepened the charged atmosphere, weaving tension into the candlelit tapestry. By the time the dessert course arrived, blood orange sorbet with basil-infused whipped cream, formalities had reached a curious détente. Marguerite studied Zena over her teacup. "You seem unfazed. Most young ladies would be tremulous." Zena met her eyes steadily. "I appreciate your hospitality, Mrs. Blackmoor. I'm simply enjoying a fine evening and fine company." Marguerite's lips curved in a hint of approval. "We shall see how well you weather tomorrow's council." She tapped the table with her fingertip, echoing the earlier gavel-like gesture. For tonight, let us toast to new alliances. Glasses rose around the table. Zena and Thorne exchanged brief, conspiratorial glances before clinking their crystal. The quartet's music swelled softly, underscoring the moment. At the far end of the hall, a pair of discreet servants began clearing the plates. The atmosphere lightened slightly as stories of Blackmoor family lore and impulsive youthful escapades filled the gaps. Laughter danced among the silver accents, but underneath it all lay the gravity of unspoken agreements. As the last of the chocolate pot de crème vanished, Marguerite rose once more. I believe we've seen how well our two guests integrate. She turned to Zena. Aria, pardon Zena, what do you think of our manor? Zena smiled brightly, rising to her feet. It's breathtaking and timeless. Thank you for welcoming me so graciously. Marguerite inclined her head. Our pleasure. Thorne, escort Miss Nightingale to the conservatory for brandy. Thorne stood immediately, offering his arm. Zena slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, and together they crossed the hall. Behind them, the Blackmoor clan exchanged knowing looks. In the Moonstone Conservatory, a domed room lined with exotic orchids and faintly glowing moonstone panels, a footman prepared 2 glasses of rare single malt brandy. The scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted through the open terrace doors. Thorne handed Zena a slender crystal. This estate outshines every lounge and boardroom I know. Zena raised her glass, examining the amber liquid. It's a fair trade for a night of formality. He nodded, then gave her a direct look. Tomorrow, my mother and I will convene with family council. They will ask you to confirm what we discussed. Zena's throat tightened. This was the real test, the moment of truth. She steadied her breath. I will confirm. Thorne's half-smile was faint, but it reached his gray eyes. Good. They sipped their brandy in companionable silence, 2 wills momentarily aligned under moonlit glass.
Outside.
The manor's fountains whispered against carved stone basins, and the distant crash of waves reverberated through the cove. For a single, perfect moment, Zena forgot her grandmother's urging, the midnight pact, and every guarded handshake. She felt the pulse of possibility, dangerous and thrilling, coursing through the grand conservatory. Shall we? Thorne set down his glass, offering Zena his arm once more. She slipped into step beside him, turned toward the terrace, and inhaled the chilled ocean breeze. Whatever tomorrow's council held, Zena Nightingale was prepared. Tonight, she had met the challenge and had every intention of winning. The morning sunlight slanted through the lofty windows of Ember and Echo's studio, illuminating Zena Nightingale's determined figure as she entered the sprawling open-plan workspace. Art installations in neon hues and plush charcoal seating created an atmosphere of fearless creativity, but today, Zena intended to channel that creativity towards something far more consequential than any ad campaign. Clutching a manila folder stamped with glowing ember motifs, she strode straight to her war room. A long white table strewn with mood boards, analytics printouts, and half-drunk cups of dark roast coffee. Inside the dossier lay the evidence she'd painstakingly gathered, an audio recording of Dr. Marisol Hart being offered hush money, photographs of falsified lab results, and anonymous staff testimonies detailing coercion. Zena set the folder on the table and tapped it decisively. Around her, the core Ember and Echo team assembled. Diego Ramirez, head of digital strategy, swiveled his multiple screens to display social audience metrics. Nia Kapoor, social media guru, refreshed trending topic feeds on her phone, and Hank Thompson, senior copywriter, brandished a marker above a blank whiteboard. Zena's voice rang clear and unwavering. Today we launch Operation Ember Exposé. We have proof that Dr. Hart was forced to falsify medical records for Hawthorne Industries Air. We'll unleash this across every channel, social, press, patient networks, everyone. By noon, the clinic's board will have no choice but to act. Diego grinned as he keyed in the final audience segments. We've identified every relevant group. Patient advocacy forums, medical ethics boards, local news outlets. Engagement will skyrocket. Nia chimed in, I've drafted 3 trending hashtags. Hashtag #ExposéEbentide, hashtag Justice for Marisol, hashtag Ember Exposé. They're queued to launch at exactly 10 a.m. I'll monitor every mention. Hank sketched 3 bullet points on the whiteboard. Headline, visuals, call to action. Our headline needs to hit like a thunderbolt. Blackmoor's secret. How a top law firm bought a woman's silence. Subhead. I almost lost everything before I found the courage to speak. Zena tapped her phone, recalling Thorne's cautious text. Proceed carefully, and typed back, careful isn't in my vocabulary. Then she turned loyal scrutiny on her team. We rally Marisol as our primary witness. Diego, secure a private studio for her statement. Nia, lock down influencer partnerships, start with Dr. Laverne Chu. Hank, script Marisol's narrative with emotional precision. At 9:45 a.m., Zena called Dr. Marisol Hart to confirm her appearance. Marisol's gentle voice trembled with resolve. If this is what it takes to bring the truth to light, I'm ready. But I need safety, no ambush interviews. Zena assured her, we'll film you in a closed studio. Only your words, no intrusion. With that, the operation's final pieces fell into place. At precisely 10 a.m., Ember and Echo's social accounts erupted with the exposé. A bold headline appeared on every feed. Blackmoor's secret. How a top law firm bought a woman's silence. I almost lost my career, my child's future, and my voice until I spoke out. Dr. Marisol Hart.
Below.
A 90-second video opened on Marisol's tear-streaked face as she recounted threats and envelopes of cash handed over in Hawthorne's private conference room. Cuts to close-ups of signed checks. The pristine clinic facade and Hawthorne attorneys departing in stilettos and wingtips delivered the full narrative. The film closed on a simple directive, #ExposéEbentide, demand justice, and an invitation to share personal stories. Simultaneously, a press release landed in inboxes of medical journals and local news outlets, promising an exclusive deep dive into the clinic's malpractice. Within minutes, patient advocacy groups echoed the hashtag, and Medical Watch forums buzzed with outrage. Ember and Echo's analytics dashboard turned crimson with real-time engagement metrics. The Bayview Tribune's homepage flashed a breaking news banner. Blackmoor scandal. Patient records falsified. Local talk radio shows called in live, law experts and ethicists debating the fallout. Diego pumped his fist. Nia's phone lit up with influencer confirmations. Hank, eyes gleaming, read out hot takes. This goes beyond a single clinic. This is systemic corruption. By noon, the board of Ebentide Clinic convened an emergency session. On a giant screen, the exposé played in full. Gasps and muttered curses filled the room. Board Chair Dr. Conrad Wells pounded the table. Draft our apology immediately. And summoned Dr. Hart to testify before the trustees. Their corporate counsel, Lawrence Ingram, pale and shaking, agreed. If we don't act now, we face federal investigations and mass lawsuits. Less than an hour later, the clinic's press release went live, pledging an independent inquiry and a request for Marisol's testimony. Zena watched the news tickers. Hawthorne Industries stock dipped 7%. Clinic appointment cancellations soared. Legal analysts projected multiple class actions. She allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. We've lit the spark, she told the team. Now we wait for the flames. Later, Zena slipped onto the rooftop terrace overlooking Emberhaven Cove. Twinkling lights from Obsidian Lounge and Aurelian Manor seemed distant now, outshone by the glow of justice in motion. She drew in the salty sea breeze, heart racing. Operation Ember Exposé had met its mark. Next stop, Marisol's boardroom testimony, where truth would blaze brighter than any scandal. The morning after Ember Exposé detonated across every news feed, Zena Nightingale returned to Aurelian Manor for the next step of her unusual pact with Thorne Blackmoor. The manor's grand foyer, usually hushed and gleaming, now felt charged with anticipation. Zena's heels clicked on polished marble as she made her way through arching corridors hung with ancestral tapestries. Ahead, the grand salon's cavernous windows flooded the room with pale sunrise, illuminating 3 high-backed chairs arranged before a small mahogany table. Marguerite Blackmoor, her silver hair impeccably coiffed, presided like a queen staking her claim. Beside her sat Dr. Marisol Hart, still radiant despite recent upheavals, and Zena herself. In the center, Thorne Blackmoor folded his hands, a pillar of calm determination. Marguerite's voice sliced through the morning hush. "We convene to formalize your 90-day trial. At its end, you will confirm your intentions, either proceed to engagement or dissolve this arrangement without rancor." She fixed Zena with a steely gaze. "Present your terms." Thorne cleared his throat and slid a thick scroll across the table. "First," he began, "Zena will continue championing justice for Marisol until the board hearing concludes and charges against Hawthorne Industries' heir are secured. Second, I will fully invest myself, attending your cafe's grand opening, introducing you to Blackmoor Associates, and advising on legal matters. Third, in 90 days, I decide whether to honor my promise and commit." His tone was unwavering, even as Zena felt her pulse quicken. Zena met his gaze before replying. "Agreed. In return, you will publicly support Astra Luna Café's official launch and serve as my escort at Emberhaven's Arts Gala. Should either of us fail these terms, the alliance ends." She dipped the quill and signed. Marisol followed with a steady hand, sealing the ardent alliance. Over the next 3 months, Zena and Thorne embarked on a partnership that tested every facet of their resolve. In week 1 sunlight, Zena coordinated with Thorne in Ember and Echo's war room. Diego Ramirez mapped social media mobilization. Nia Kapoor cued hashtags to launch at peak hours. And Hank Thompson drafted emotionally charged headlines. Thorne grilled hospital insiders on legal loopholes and attended midnight strategy calls, his sharp mind complementing Zena's fearless creativity. They clashed over messaging tactics, Thorne advocating caution, Zena demanding boldness, but each early skirmish tempered into mutual respect. By week 2, their alliance's first major public test arrived. Marisol's testimony at the Bellevue Pavilion's board hearing was set. Zena and Thorne claimed prime seats as Marisol needed no prompting. She spoke with crystalline dignity, recounting threats and forged documents. Candlelight danced over trusty faces twisted into shock. Zena sensed Thorne's hand brush hers. That silent contact spoke of solidarity stronger than any vow. Afterward, they retreated to the library's low-lit alcove, where they toasted success with rare single-malt scotch. Marguerite's approving nod at their solidarity was the first sign that Zena had won the matriarch's guarded respect. Week 4 dawned with a different challenge. The public debut of Astra Luna Café on Argent Strand. Zena's brick-and-mortar dream, lavender honey mocktails, smoky mushroom crostini, materialized under Nia's influencer blitz. Thorne arrived precisely at opening hour, bowing beside her in a flourish of polished support. Flashbulbs greeted their ribbon cutting, and by day's end, lines snaked down the block. That night, under moonlit strings strung between cafe lanterns, Thorne toasted Zena. "You breathe life into every vision." The sincerity in his gray eyes confirmed that this partnership had become something deeper than a mere arrangement. Yet by week 6, the weight of dual battles, legal and entrepreneurial, began to show cracks. Ember and Echo's war room extended into the early morning, and Astra Luna's ovens hummed past midnight. Frayed nerves led to a blistering confrontation in the studio's neon-lit lounge. Zena accused Thorne of micromanaging her brand launch, while he countered that she'd recklessly diverted resources. Harsh words echoed off concrete walls. At her lowest, Zena stormed outside into a downpour. He followed wordlessly, sheltering her beneath his coat. In that silent quay, drenched under the rain, apologies were whispered and forgiveness freely given. Their bond, once transactional, had evolved into genuine care. As week 8's society calendar unfurled, Marguerite summoned them to the Blackmoor Gala at Meridian House. In the swirling satin of the ballroom, Zena delivered an off-the-cuff homage to partnerships forged in purpose, earning warm applause from luminaries. Crowds parted as Thorne offered her his arm for the waltz, two silhouettes moving in tandem beneath frescoed ceilings. In that dance, Zena realized how much she relied on his steadiness, and he saw how brightly her spirit shone when he stood by her side. In the 10th week, whispers of a clinic settlement threatened to upend the balance. Thorne retreated into late-night document reviews, and Zena shouldered café crises alone. Exhaustion nearly drove a wedge between them again, until Marisol's recovery spurred them back into unified action. They hosted a Justice Jam fundraiser with Ember and Echo, raising seed money for medical malpractice victims, proving that their alliance wielded real-world impact beyond personal gain. Finally, on the eve of Day 90, they returned to the Moonstone Conservatory. Orchids glowed under moonstone panels, and the air smelled of night-blooming jasmine. 2 glasses of brandy sat on the marble edge. Outside, lanterns warmed the garden paths. Thorne handed Zena a glass. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we decide." Zena closed her eyes, feeling the gravity of everything they'd built together. Viral exposés, courtroom victories, a thriving cafe, and the raw intimacy of shared struggles. "Tomorrow," she agreed, voice steady, "we decide." As dawn lightened the sky over Emberhaven Cove, they emerged from the conservatory arm in arm. The harbor was calm, sailboats drifting under pastel skies. Behind them lay 90 days of trials that had tested their values, ambitions, and hearts. Ahead lay the decisive moment, to formalize a lifelong partnership or return to separate paths. In the hush of sunrise, the Arden Alliance stood poised on the brink, its members bound by purpose, passion, and the promise of a beginning still unwritten. The morning of the hearing dawned cold and gray over Emberhaven Cove, the harbor waters churning under a wind that seemed to whisper anticipation. Zena Nightingale arrived at the courthouse with Thorne Blackmoor at her side, their silhouettes framed by the grand limestone columns that bore the weight of centuries of law. Marisol Hart followed closely, pale in her tailored navy suit, but her chin was raised, no longer burdened by fear. The trio ascended the broad steps, the quiet click of Zena's heels echoing determination. Inside the marble foyer, a hushed crowd of reporters and onlookers filled the benches. Cameras perched atop tripods, microphones clustered like watchful birds. Zena slipped past the cordon of press into the well of the courtroom, her heart pounding with both excitement and gravity. She found the front row. Thorne escorted Marisol to her seat, offering the comfort of his steady presence. As they settled, the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Helena Strathmore, silver-haired and unflappable, entered to the sound of rapping gavel. Court is now in session. The matter of Dr. Marisol Hart versus Ebentide Clinic, docket number 3174, is called, intoned the bailiff. Judge Strathmore surveyed the room, her gaze piercing. "Will counsel please identify themselves for the record?" Thorne stood, bowing his head slightly. "Thorne Blackmoor for the plaintiff." "Your Honor." His voice carried the confidence of a seasoned litigator. On the opposing side, Ebentide's counsel, Lawrence Ingram, rose ashen-faced. Lawrence Ingram representing Ebentide Clinic and related defendants. The judge nodded. "Proceed with opening statements." She turned toward Thorne. "Counsel." Thorne stepped forward. "Your Honor, members of the court, what we address today is not merely a dispute over medical records or corporate liability. It is a matter of fundamental trust between patient and physician, a bond shattered by greed and deception. Dr. Marisol Hart, a respected obstetrician at this very clinic, was coerced into falsifying diagnostic results for the heir of Hawthorne Industries. Those falsehoods irreparably harmed her professional standing and jeopardized the health of countless patients. Today we will show, through evidence and testimony, how the clinic's highest authorities conspired to manipulate medical data and why justice demands redress. A faint murmur rustled through the gallery. Zena's pulse thundered as Thorne laid out the stakes with unwavering clarity. Ingram rose for the clinic's opening. Your Honor, Ebon Tide Clinic has always upheld the highest standards. Allegations of coercion and falsified results are unfounded. We will demonstrate that Dr. Hart's claims are based on hearsay, that no credible evidence exists of wrongdoing within our institution. We trust the court will see these accusations for what they are, an attempt to besmirch the reputation of a venerable clinic. He sat, leaving the room crackling with tension. Judge Strathmore eyed both counsels. Proceed. Thorne called his first witness, Marisol herself. As she took the stand, the hush deepened. The bailiff administered the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And Marisol's voice rang clear. I do. Thorne opened gently. Dr. Hart, can you describe your position at Ebon Tide Clinic? I was senior obstetrician, Marisol replied evenly. I managed high-risk pregnancies and supervised junior staff. Her composure belied the storm she endured. On January 12th, Thorne continued, you were summoned to an after-hours meeting with clinic administrators, correct? Marisol's gaze never wavered. Yes, I was called to Dr. Conrad Wells's office at 9 p.m. And what happened there? I was handed a sealed envelope containing $10,000 in cash, she said. Then Dr. Wells and his legal counsel pressured me to alter a patient's test results from marginally low to acceptable so that the heir of Hawthorne Industries would not face fertility concerns. Zena felt the courtroom tilt with Marisol's words. The gallery leaned forward. Did you comply? Thorne asked.
No.
I refused. Marisol's voice cracked only slightly. They threatened to have me stripped of my medical license and to distribute rumors that I was unfit for practice. Silence. Then Thorne produced the envelope. Carefully preserved evidence. Your Honor, this envelope bears Dr. Wells's embossed seal. I submit it as Exhibit A. Gasps rose as the bailiff accepted the envelope into evidence. Judge Strathmore's expression was grave as she inspected the seal. Thorne then called Dr. Lydia Nguyen, a lab director, to the stand. Under oath, Dr. Nguyen confirmed that a junior technician was instructed to override test values. The technician's recording, a hidden audio file, played through the courtroom speakers, the unmistakable voices of Dr. Wells and his counsel instructing the technician to mark these values as normal and no questions asked. By the time the playback ended, several board trustees who attended the hearing visibly recoiled. The hush was electric, Ebon Tide's facade of infallibility crumbling in public view. Ingram rose for cross-examination, voice clipped. Dr. Nguyen, are you certain these voices belong to Dr. Wells? The witness nodded, her composure unwavering. I recognized his cadence, and I am familiar with his seal on our letterhead. Ingram's flustered sigh echoed. He sat. Thorne then introduced the clinic's internal emails, printed on glossy sheets, showing memos from the CEO instructing staff to preserve the family's privacy and avoid any negative publicity, clearly referencing the Hawthorne heir. Each email was time-stamped and digitally signed. As the last slide illuminated on the courtroom screen, Zena felt a swell of triumph. The evidence left no room for doubt. The conspiracy extended to the highest echelons of clinic leadership. Judge Strathmore rose for a recess. We will reconvene in 1 hour for the defendant's witnesses. She pounded her gavel. In the hallway, reporters swarmed Thorne and Marisol. Cameras flashed as Marisol answered questions with courage. Thorne stood by her side, his protective presence a silent bulwark. Zena slipped through the press, meeting Thorne's eyes in a nod. The first half of their mission had succeeded. Back in the courtroom, Ebon Tide's counsel scrambled to present their defense, calling nurses who insisted the procedure was routine and administrators who claimed no recollection of the meeting. Their testimony faltered in the face of irrefutable documentation and the technician's recording. Each denial rang hollow against the tornado of evidence. As afternoon light waned, Thorne delivered his closing argument with measured intensity. You have heard first-hand testimony. You have seen documents stamped with official seals. You have listened to the voices of those who carried out the deception. No reasonable person can deny that Dr. Hart was forced to violate her oath under threat. We ask this court to vindicate her name, to hold Ebon Tide Clinic accountable, and to restore faith in the bond between doctor and patient. Ingram rose for a hasty rebuttal, but the judge cut him off. Thank you. Your written argument may be filed within 7 days. We will reconvene for a ruling 2 weeks from now. As the gavel fell, the courtroom exhaled. Reporters surged forward. Marisol brushed past, leaning on Thorne's arm. Zena joined them, pride and relief flushing her cheeks. They emerged into the crisp air, and a throng of supporters parted to cheer. Patient advocacy groups chanted, "Justice for Marisol." The hashtags #ExposeEbontide and #JusticeForMarisol blazed across live social feeds on everyone's phones. Outside, Zena caught Thorne's gaze. His eyes, unguarded for the first time that day, held gratitude and something deeper, adrenaline-fueled respect. Marisol stood between them, safe at last from the clinic's oppressive shadow, her victory hard-won. With midday fading to afternoon, the three of them walked down the courthouse steps beneath proud smiles of allies and flashing cameras. Thanks to Operation Ember Exposé and the unwavering resolve of the Arden Alliance, Dr. Marisol Hart had been rescued not only from corporate malpractice, but from the silence that once threatened her career and integrity. In that moment, as Zena's arm linked through Thorne's, she realized that they had forged a bond of shared purpose, one that might just withstand whatever lay ahead. A week after Marisol's courtroom triumph, Zena Nightingale was celebrating Astra Luna Café's booming success on a breezy Saturday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating patrons sipping lavender honey mocktails and nibbling on smoked mushroom crostini. Zena flitted between tables, smiling, greeting regulars, offering a private tasting of her latest rose-infused latte. On her phone, Nia Kapoor's live feed showed a line forming around the block. The cafe's sold-out sign had become its proud emblem. Just as Zena sank into a tufted leather chair to catch her breath, the front door chimed insistently. She looked up to see a tall woman in a pale pink trench coat, clutching a weathered leather satchel. The woman's eyes, bright, anxious, locked onto Zena's. Recognition flickered in Zena's mind. Seraphine Vale, the sleek UX designer who had floated in and out of Ember and Echo's social events over the past 2 months. Never more than a polite hello exchanged, but now, Seraphine's presence felt like a blow. Zena rose, smoothing her skirt. Seraphine?
Hi.
What brings you here? Seraphine's voice trembled as she approached the counter. I need to speak with Thorne Blackmoor. It's urgent. Zena stiffened. Thorne was nowhere in sight. He'd promised to join her later for a private meeting. Now her stomach clenched. He's not here. Can I help you? Seraphine drew a deep breath, the pastel coat slipping from her shoulders. She reached into the satchel and withdrew a small, pink-trimmed envelope. Give this to him, and tell him I'm already here. Zena took the envelope hesitantly. The cafe's warmth seemed to drain away under the buzzing fluorescent lights. I should call him. Seraphine's eyes filled. You can. But he's right upstairs in his office preparing night court briefs. I wanted to deliver this in person. She placed a hand on her abdomen. Her trench coat parted, revealing a gently rounded belly beneath a simple black dress. I'm 3 months pregnant, Zena. His child. A gasp rippled through the cafe as baristas froze mid-pour and customers leaned forward, spilling whipped cream. The mocktail bubbles and coffee steam twisted in the suddenly heavy air. Zena felt cold. She blinked at Seraphine's open vulnerability, her face pale but fierce. You what? Seraphine swallowed. I didn't plan this. I know how it sounds. I try to handle it privately, but it's his child. I need him to know. Zena's heart thundered. Betrayal flared through her veins hotter than Ember Exposé's final blaze. She glared at the pale pink envelope in her hand. You should leave, she managed, voice low. This isn't the place. Seraphine's lips trembled. Where else, Zena? I've nowhere to go. I thought maybe you two could figure it out. Zena rounded the counter, setting a hand on Seraphine's shoulder to steady her. Listen, you're confused. You need privacy and support, but this cafe is my sanctuary. I can't have you bearing this here. She retrieved her cell phone and dialed Thorne's personal line. Seraphine's voice cracked. Please don't. But the call connected. Thorne's measured voice came through the speaker. Zena? Thorne, it's Seraphine. She's here, at the cafe. Zena held the receiver out so Seraphine could speak. She wants to talk to you. A beat of silence. Then Thorne's voice, low and tight. I'm on my way. Zena turned to Seraphine. Go sit there, she said, nodding to a quiet corner by the back window. I'll handle this. Seraphine moved with relief, taking a seat on a velvet banquette as Zena retreated behind the counter. Zena's fingers hovered over the espresso machine. She would not spill a single latte. The cafe's soundtrack of ambient lo-fi beats felt distant, drowned by her pounding pulse. Thorne arrived 5 minutes later in a swift, dark sedan, his tailored overcoat trailing behind him. He kept his head down, but his broad shoulders were squared, ready for confrontation. He joined Zena behind the counter, eyes narrowing as he caught sight of Seraphine's rounded silhouette. Zena, what's going on? He asked quietly. He placed a steady hand on Zena's arm. Taking a breath, Zena nodded toward the banquette. She says she's pregnant. Thorne's eyes flicked to Seraphine, then back to Zena. How far along? 3 months, Seraphine said, voice small. Thorne's jaw clenched. Alone? Yes. She braced herself on the banquette. I needed to tell you. Zena placed a hand on Thorne's arm. I need you here, not wherever. She stole a glance at the lunch rush crowd, a stifled grind of foam spillers and whispered gossip. Thorne straightened, voice firm. You asked to see me. I'm here. He turned to Seraphine, his lawyer's composure flickering into anger. Why now? Seraphine rose shakily. Because I can't keep hiding.
I'm scared.
I need him in my life, for the baby. A hush fell. Cups clinked gently on saucers. Zena kept her eyes on the counter, her ears straining for every word. Thorne's sigh was deep. You know what this means. He looked at Zena. Our arrangement, our trial period, this changes everything. Zena drew herself erect. She could taste the metallic tang of betrayal. Yes, she said softly. It does. Thorne ran a hand through his hair. Seraphine, we need to take this somewhere private.
Now.
Zena nodded. I'll cover the cafe. Diego, lock the doors. She caught the barista's eye, pointing to the register. Orders would be paused. The cafe was effectively on lockdown. Within minutes, the three of them stepped into Thorne's sedan and drove through Emberhaven's twisting streets to a discreet townhouse on Harbor Heights Road, one of Marguerite's many properties. Inside, a plush parlor awaited with heavy drapes pulled tight and a low fire crackling. Thorne shut the door, and Seraphine sank onto a leather chair, head in her hands. Thorne struck a match under a crystal ashtray. I need to know the truth, he said, lighting a cigar he'd kept stashed. Smoke curled between them. Tell me every detail. Seraphine raised tear-stained eyes. We met at Pixel Paradox's launch party. One thing led to another. It wasn't planned. I tried to get an abortion, but the clinic wouldn't see me without his permission. By the time I thought of talking to you, she shook her head. It was too late. Thorne exhaled, amber embers glowing on the cigar tip. You tried to handle this alone? She nodded. I was ashamed. Thorne turned to Zena, whose face had gone stony. Zena cut him off gently. Enough, she said. Her voice trembled. You need to focus on her right now. He knelt beside Seraphine, gaze softening under the golden lamp. You're not alone anymore, he said quietly. I'll take responsibility. I'll support you and our child. Seraphine's shoulders shook, relief and new confusion washing over her. She looked to Zena, who stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed protectively over her chest. Zena's eyes glistened, anger, heartbreak, and something unexpected, compassion. Thorne rose and nodded to Zena. "I'll need you too." As Seraphine and Thorne discussed next steps, legal counsel, family disclosure, and medical appointments, Zena stepped back into the hallway. She pressed a palm to the cool plaster and closed her eyes. The last 90 days had battered her world. Viral crusades and café triumphs had felt like lifetimes.
Now.
A new reality had crashed into her life like a storm surge. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Inside, Thorne pledged to do right by Seraphine and their unborn child. Zena knew this moment marked a turning point. Her alliance with Thorne, once born of convenience and shared purpose, now fractured by fresh duty. Beyond the parlor door, voices rose in muted relief. Zena opened her eyes. Whatever came next, for Thorne, Seraphine, Marisol, and Astra Luna, she would face it on her own terms. And that, she realized, would be her greatest trial yet. The week after Seraphine's revelation, Zena Nightingale found herself at a crossroads. The Embassy of Justice, her work with Ember and Echo, had finally yielded vindication for Dr. Marisol Hart, and the embers of that success had illuminated new paths. Yet Zena's own dream, the one she had sketched on napkins for years, still awaited life. A cafe that would blend purpose with pleasure, where every sip felt like a gentle revolution. She named it Astra Luna Café and Bites, envisioning a sanctuary of lunar-themed mocktails, botanical infusions, and fusion street snacks that celebrated health and community. Zena's first step was securing the perfect location. She scoured Emberhaven Cove's bustling districts for weeks before uncovering an abandoned brick storefront on Argent Strand, once a bakery, now silent, with dusty display windows and peeling paint. Despite its faded charm, Zena saw potential. The original arched entry, the wide windows perfect for natural light, and the back patio overlooking the harbor. She signed the lease on a crisp spring morning, the contract's final pen stroke feeling as electrifying as her Courtroom Triumph. Next came the renovation. Zena hired local artisans to restore the exposed red brick and install reclaimed oak flooring. She commissioned a mural of a silver crescent moon suspended over stylized waves, its glow mirrored in polished stainless steel counters. Edison-style bulbs dangled from black iron fixtures, casting warm halos over handcrafted tables. Behind the counter, gleaming espresso machines sat ready, awaiting the dance of skilled baristas. At the rear, French doors opened to a cobblestone patio where string lights twinkled like distant stars. Throughout the transformation, Zena juggled her Ember and Echo responsibilities and the cafe's demands. She sketched menu prototypes on her subway commute, testing lavender-honey ratios on crowded train rides. She collaborated with Diego Ramirez to craft a brand identity, a stylized phoenix rising in moonlight, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. Nia Kapoor built pre-launch buzz with cryptic social media teasers, first a simple silver crescent, then a shot of copper-hued latte art, finally an invitation. A new dawn is coming. #Astra Luna. 1 month before opening, Zena recruited her team. She hired Emilia Santos, a veteran barista whose latte art had gone viral on local foodie blogs, and Reggie Kim, a pastry chef known for avant-garde flavor pairings. She brought on Ivy Tran, a marketing intern with a talent for community outreach, and Marcus O'Leary, a part-time host whose easy charm had won over dozens of tasting events. With each new hire, Zena held one-on-one vision sessions in a half-finished cafe, painting the dream of Astra Luna as more than a business, a movement toward mindful connection. As the weeks ticked down, Zena fine-tuned the menu. She partnered with Silver Coast Farms for organic lavender and jasmine blossoms, and with Harbor Heights Apiary for raw wildflower honey. She sourced heirloom citrus for blood orange sorbet and heirloom mushrooms for her signature moonlit umami crostini. Each item was christened with lunar names: Waxing Gibbous Matcha, Eclipse Espresso Elixir, and New Moon Nachos served with cashew crema. On opening day, teams arrived at dawn. The scent of fresh-baked rosemary, focaccia, mingled with pulled espresso shots and the crisp tang of citrus-infused sparkling water. Zena opened the doors at precisely 7 a.m., the lock tumbling open like a held breath. Seconds later, a trickle of curious early risers drifted in. The first guest, an elderly poet who lived down the street, swung the door open. Blinking at the rose-hued decor, Zena greeted him by name. He had followed her progress on social media. His face brightened as he sipped the crescent bloom latte, and he declared it worthy of his morning sonnets. By mid-morning, the line snaked around the block. Local bloggers queued for a solar flare kombucha shot and a wedge of zucchini cardamom loaf. Photos and stories flooded Instagram, ticking up the hashtag Astra Luna by the hundreds. The local radio station dropped by for interviews. Even the Bayview Tribune sent a photographer for a feature spread. Zena, flitting between stations, offered warm smiles and heartfelt thanks. Beneath the adrenaline rush, she felt a surge of pride. Her café, once a sketch in a notebook, now pulsed with life. But success didn't come without challenges. On day 3, an espresso machine malfunctioned during the morning rush, and orders backed up. The line outside groaned with impatience. Zena leapt behind the counter, an experienced barista once herself, finessing a pour-over station to keep drinks flowing. Amelia rallied the team, while Reggie dispatched extra batches of sweetbread to clear hungry throats. Within minutes, the mechanical failure became a footnote, replaced by Zena's genuine apology and a free lunar lemon balm tea coupon. Customers laughed it off, impressed by the quick pivot, and returned with smiles. Week 2 brought another test. A city inspector arrived unannounced to review sanitation and permits. Zena's heart hammered as the inspector paced through the kitchen. She watched from the service window, worrying she'd overlooked a detail. But Ivy, who'd memorized every regulation, answered queries with confidence. The inspector's furrowed brow smoothed into a nod. "You're in full compliance." It's rare to see such dedication. Zena exhaled in relief. Astra Luna's foundation was solid. As the first weeks passed, Zena turned her focus to community engagement. She organized weekly Crescent conversations, evenings where local poets and musicians performed free sets in the patio's lantern glow. She hosted Mindful Mondays, offering meditation tasting sessions led by a visiting yogi. Each event strengthened the cafe's bond with Emberhaven's creative circles. Before long, Astra Luna was not merely a place to eat and drink. It was a gathering hub, a crucible for ideas, and a space where strangers became friends over moonlit mocktails. Behind the scenes, Zena continued her alliance with Thorne and Marisol. She invited both to a private tasting of her new botanical, wax and wane smoothie. Thorne tasted thoughtfully and nodded approval. Marisol beamed as she indulged in the honey, lavender drizzle. Their presence underscored Zena's dual worlds, justice and hospitality, comfortably woven together. By week 4, Astra Luna's online reviews soared. 5-star ratings on Ember app praised the cafe's ambience, the inventive menu, and Zena's personal touch. Customers gushed about the Harvest Moon panini and the Stardust Spritzer, terms Zena had coined herself. Even city guides wrote features. Emberhaven's new gem, Astra Luna. At night, string lights reflected off the harbor, and couples lingered over cocoa-spiced churros. Despite momentum, Zena never let complacency settle. Each Sunday, she convened a moonboard meeting with her team, drafting seasonal menu tweaks, brainstorming pop-up collaborations, and analyzing customer feedback. She invested in staff training, sending Amelia to latte art workshops and Reggie to sustainable farming conferences. She negotiated partnerships with local bookshops for coffee and classics mornings and with the art gallery for palette and pastry afternoons. Each initiative deepened Astra Luna's roots in the community. As the second month dawned, Zena hit another milestone, a feature in Crescent Bay Weekly titled From Courtroom to Coffee House: How Zena Nightingale Built an Oasis. The article chronicled her journey from Ember Exposé's mastermind to café visionary. complete with professional photographs of her poised beside a silver leaf latte. The resulting media surge nearly crashed the café's Wi-Fi as customers flooded social channels with praise. But Zena remained grounded. She still arose before dawn to taste the new supermoon smoothie batches and greeted delivery vans with gratitude. She spent late evenings tallying expenses, ensuring payroll was met and suppliers paid. On quieter afternoons, she tucked her sketchpad behind the counter and doodled new ideas for moon-themed pastries, a gibbous ganache tart, or lunar crater cookies dusted with edible silver. As week 8 concluded, Zena's initial goals became child's play. She celebrated by hosting a sunset moonrise market on the patio, local artisans selling candles, ceramics, and jewelry. Under a sky streaked pink and orange, shoppers browsed stalls between sips of her signature lunar lavender latte. The event sold out booths in days, and the cafe's seats overflowed with smiling faces. Throughout it all, Zena's partnership with Thorne evolved beyond the 90-day trial. He attended each milestone: opening day, inspector's approval, moonboard lunch, offering encouragement without overshadowing her leadership. Marisol, too, became a regular, offering health workshops in the back room, advising on stress relief teas. Their presence was a testament to the Arden Alliance's resilience, even as new responsibilities beckoned. By the end of week 12, Astra Luna Café and Bites was an Emberhaven institution. Zena stood behind the counter one crisp morning, a flurry of orders swirling around her. She paused long enough to admire the sun glinting off the harbor, the cafe's sign gently swaying in the breeze. Patrons strolled in with smiles. Regulars called her by name. Hartford, the elderly poet, recited lines beside a waxing crescent Americano, while teenage students typed away on laptops in the corner. Zena inhaled the mingled aromas of hearth-baked focaccia, jasmine-infused brews, and salty sea air. In that moment, she understood that every challenge, the long hours, mechanical breakdowns, unexpected revelations, had led her here. Astra Luna was more than a business. It was the embodiment of her passion, perseverance, and belief that community and creativity could rise from the ashes of adversity like a phoenix beneath a silver moon. With a final glance around the sunlit cafe, Zena returned to work. Another day of service lay ahead, another chance to nourish bodies, spark conversations, and foster connections. Under the banner of Astra Luna, she would continue to build something enduring, one handcrafted drink at a time. Autumn's first chill drifted through Emberhaven Cove, brushing golden leaves along the cobblestone streets. Inside Astra Luna Café, steam curled from lavender honey lattes as patrons huddled over wool scarves and cinnamon croissants. Zena Nightingale moved behind the counter with her usual grace, orchestrating the morning rush like a seasoned conductor. Orders hummed on the tablet: gibbous ganache tart, stardust spritzer, moonbeam matcha. Each ring of the register brought a gentle thrill. Her cafe was thriving in both reputation and community spirit. She glanced at the door chime, expecting a regular. Instead, it swung open to reveal a tall figure in a well-worn leather jacket and faded black jeans, a canvas tote slung over one shoulder. He paused in the entryway, surveying the warm bustle with a tilt of his head. For a heartbeat, Zena's heart stuttered. She recognized those broad shoulders, the relaxed stance, the familiar tilt of a once comfortable world. "Caelum," she whispered, stepping around the counter. His hazel eyes lifted, and a slow smile curved over his lips. "Zena Nightingale," he said, voice warm as a bonfire. "Long time." Her breath caught. He looked the same, earthy charm stubble, close-cropped hair dusted with early silver, a posture of quiet confidence honed by years in the Marine Corps. It had been almost a decade since their last encounter at Crescent High's graduation, yet in his presence, the years dissolved. "Caelum Drake," she replied, reaching out. His hand closed around hers with easy strength. A jolt, more potent than any smash of espresso, rippled up her arm. He stepped inside, shrugging off his jacket. I've been back in Emberhaven for a few months, he explained, voice soft as the cafe's lo-fi playlist. Managing the Harvest All project, helping rebuild the old fort into a resilience training center. He nodded toward the tote. I grabbed a latte. Thought I'd stop by. Zena led him to a quiet corner table near the window, the one with the best harbor view. She perched on the edge of the seat, eyes bright. You didn't say you were back in town. I've been busy with the cafe launch. And I've been buried in soil and stone up at the Isle, he said. Life took us different ways. He studied her, a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, affection, perhaps, buried beneath years of distance. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, watching morning sunlight dance on drip rings of spilled cream. Then Zena's shoulders relaxed. You know everything that's happened, right? The Ember Exposé, Marisol's trial, the cafe. He nodded, sipping his latte. I've been following. I saw the news on my phone. You're incredible. His voice held genuine admiration, melting away any awkwardness. A blush warmed Zena's cheeks. Thanks. It's been a whirlwind. He leaned forward, folding his arms on the table.
Tell me.
She took a breath and recounted the journey. The viral justice campaign, Marisol's victory, the cafe's opening. Seraphine's shock. Each chapter prompted sharp intake of breath or furrowed brows from Caelum. When she finished, he placed a steady hand over hers. You've been through so much. I'm proud of you. Zena's throat tightened. I didn't always know what I was doing. He offered a half smile. You did. You turned adversity into action. A hesitant warmth bloomed in her chest. She studied him under the soft cafe lighting. How have you been? Harvest Isle sounds adventurous. He chuckled, eyes bright. It's a challenge. The fort was battered by storms. We're turning it into a training center for first responders, typhoon drills, and community resilience programs. I manage operations and logistics. He paused, gaze drifting to the window. I miss this place, though. Zena watched as he traced patterns on the condensation of his glass. Emberhaven feels grounded, she said. No matter how the world changes, people still crave connection. He met her gaze. You give them that. Their conversation drifted from past to present, mutual friends, neighborhood changes, childhood haunts. Caelum recalled sneaking into the abandoned lighthouse by the harbor. Zena laughed at memories of midnight dares on the pier. Each shared recollection wove a tapestry of nostalgia and longing. At noon, the cafe's rush subsided, and Zena rose to clear their table. Caelum helped sweep fallen leaves from the patio doors, an instinctive gesture of care that melted any final semblance of distance. As she returned, a voice crackled over the cafe's sound system. Astra Luna in 5, the pop-up Moonrise Market, was about to begin, an outdoor artisan fair that had grown from Zena's community gatherings. Today, stalls brimmed with local crafts, hand-thrown pottery, beeswax candles, leather-bound journals. The buzz of live music drifted in from a side stage. Zena bit her lip, torn between delight and hesitation. I should get back to coordinating, she said softly. Caelum stood as well. Let me help. She peered at him, surprise flickering. I'm not sure. He gave a conspiratorial grin. I can be your unofficial event coordinator. Zena laughed, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in years. All right, Mr. Coordinator. Together, they wove through the market. Caelum manned the ticket table, checking in local artisans with a clipped, professional calm. Zena greeted customers, swept up a teething toddler in her arms to juggle a solar flare kombucha, and offered cinnamon spice samples to passers-by. Between tasks, Caelum slipped her water or wiped sweat from her brow, his presence steady and reassuring. At the Lunar Crafts booth, Zena introduced Caelum to the potter, Mr. Finch, who displayed mugs stamped with crescent moons. Caelum purchased a steaming cup of chamomile for Zena, an unspoken apology for missing her initial return. By mid-afternoon, the market glowed beneath fair lanterns. Musicians tuned their guitars for a final set, and children ran barefoot through painted hopscotch grids. Zena paused, taking it all in. The laughter, the handcrafted wares, the soft light slanting through autumn branches. It felt like a living mosaic of her dreams realized. Caelum found her by the pickup station. He handed her the chamomile in a hand-thrown mug, its glaze catching the light.
For you, he said.
You deserve a break. She raised the mug, inhaling the calming scent. Thank you. Her voice trembled with gratitude. He touched her arm. I'm here, Zena. If you ever need help. His eyes flicked to her cafe, then back. With anything. Zena's breath caught. 8 weeks earlier, her world had fractured under the weight of concealed pregnancies and courtroom battles. Now, feeling the coffee's warmth seep into her palm and seeing Caelum's steady gaze, she realized she wasn't alone. She broke off, uncertain how to articulate the whirl of relief and possibility. A sudden cheer rose as the market's final music notes lingered. An elderly musician, appointed Artist of the Week, took a bow, and the crowd clapped. Zena turned back to Caelum, emboldened by the community's warmth. I'm glad you're here, she said simply. He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and held no reservations. Me too. In the golden glow of lantern light and scattered leaves, Zena felt something stir, a seed of hope for the future. Thrones had shifted, past alliances had tested her spirit. Yet in this quiet moment, the return of an old friend offered the promise of new foundations built on trust, understanding, and genuine affection. As dusk deepened into early evening, Zena led Caelum to a small rooftop balcony behind the cafe. From there, the harbor stretched out in shades of indigo, and the first stars pricked the sky. She poured 2 fresh lattes into takeaway cups, her signature, waxing crescent latte, streaked with moonbeam foam. They leaned against the railing, savoring the cool air and gentle buzz of the marketplace below. City lights shimmered like fireflies on the water. I never thought I'd see you again, Zena admitted, tracing the cup's rim with her thumb. Caelum turned to face her. There's a lot I never thought I'd do, he said, but being here, with you, feels right. She met his gaze, the world narrowing to the two of them beneath a canvas of emerging stars. I'm glad you did. Caelum stepped closer, the music of the market fading as he cupped her cheek. Zena. She placed a finger over his lips. No hurry, she whispered. We have all night. He chuckled, brushing hair from her forehead. All night, he agreed. And there, on that lantern-lit rooftop balcony, Zena realized that life's most unexpected chapters often brought the greatest gifts. Emberhaven Cove had witnessed her fierce crusade for justice, her entrepreneurial rebirth, and now it offered the quiet possibility of love rekindled beneath the watchful moon. The wind carried the faint strains of a closing sonata from the rooftop stage below, and for the first time in years, Zena Nightingale allowed herself to believe in beginnings anew. The stars above seemed to twinkle in approval as she and Caelum sipped their lattes, hearts open to the promise of what tomorrow, and every tomorrow after, might hold. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.